surveyor. So you can see it there.
Full turn right, so that
Bad words. I gotta say
Chris, here.
you know, he's not bringing his home anymore.
Sam said he was going to call in the Upton resident.
Yeah, it's on the road.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about it.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to today's workshop. We'll begin today's meeting with the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is now called to order. In line with the Borough of Sea Rights long-standing policy of open government and in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, I wish to advise you that adequate notice of this regularly scheduled meeting was sent to the Asbury Park Press and other local newspapers on January 10th, 2022. In each instance, the date, time, and location of this meeting will provide in the notice. This meeting is open to the public. Roll call. Council members Weaver. Here. Burkle. Here. Booker. Here. Catalano. Here. Stewart. Okay.
Here.
And there goes. All right, first up, we'll start with the remarks from the audience. If there's anybody online or in person who would like to be heard, just please state your name and your address, and the floor is yours to address governing body for minutes.
Joe Torrey, also on the kitchen, very Ocean Avenue. How you doing? I just had a small issue with the Metro.
Sounds good.
So I don't know how I should go about that. The Rhode mentions there, I'm over 3 feet 10 inches. So I'm allowed to put 3 small picnic tables on the sidewalk. We have 4 feet 3 inches of space, walking space in between the building or the 3 that I have there now, and the 3 tables on the front store. That's it.
All right, sounds good. I guess very see Deputy of Public Works. And
I'll jump in a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can you give us a diagram? Do you have a diagram? What was your last answer?
Sorry, T-O-R. That's the bench is actually here now. One move it over to the edge of the crossing.
Understood. Thank you.
I can't.
Anybody else have you heard today? Anybody online what you heard today? All right. That's what we're going to move on to our items for discussion. As always, we'll start off with the building and capital projects update.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Birdsall and I met yesterday via Zoom meeting with the Commissioner of Transportation regarding the 6 inline check valve project along Ocean Avenue in both north and south Seabright. As you know, they initially started this project probably 2 years ago. We were all involved in it, and it's regarding the flooding that happens during high tides on Ocean Avenue. The state was very good. They came in, they worked with us, and they initiated the project. However, some of the residents along the corridor objected because of the state's requirement of a large maintenance easement on their property. The easement would encumber 14.5 feet on each person's property, which is pretty onerous in some respects. That some of these properties are 50 feet wide. there's really a 7.5-foot setback under normal building conditions, and this would render much of the property unusable. Councilman Birdsall and I met with them yesterday, along with our engineer Greg Blatch of Abakian, and they agreed to go back in and determine whether these pipes could be relined and or readjusted in some form so that we can accomplish the project. They basically threw up their hands about 3 months ago when we got the letter and said, we're done. And we feel it's a public safety issue. We know it's a public safety issue. Hydroplaning, now you have people coming off of the Highland Bridge. We have a big project up there at the end. So we met with them and they agreed to take a second look at it. Councilman, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, they agreed to take a second look to see if they can do something differently in the way that they're putting these check valves in and then getting access to the property. But I mean, it really, to me, it sounded like they were just, because there was opposition, they just sounded to me like they were just they don't want to start the fight with the homeowners. So, and one of their comments really kind of bothered me a bit because they were like, well, it's not going to fix your flooding problem anyway, so why bother? I mean, essentially that's what they said. And it was really kind of like, you got to start somewhere, you know? So we're going to continue to start to fight it and see if we can get them to do something. But we may have to also, if anybody, I mean, Joe has a list of the people that have filed complaints with the state. So if any of you know them, maybe we can reach out to the homeowners and see if we can work with the homeowners in some way to get this done. Because it is something that absolutely has to be done. And if the homeowners' grievances or complaints are enough to stop the state, then the only option we have is to see if we can make nice between them. So.
Greg made a good observation that maybe if he goes out and meets with the homeowners, anything, but Greg could perhaps find another way to mitigate anything on their property. And at least an engineer talking to another engineer, it may make sense. So Greg's offered to do that, and next week we're going to try to set up a couple meetings.
Joe, just a quick question. There are existing pipes here that you want to put valves on,
Yes.
and they can't put it out on the riverside and leave the pipes in there.
They said they cannot. Is that correct?
Put the valves.
So if they want to put it on the side.
Yeah, but in line, they can't put them at the end of the.
The line pipe. That's what we were talking about. We were suggesting they put a manhole, a line pipe, put a manhole, and one extension piece of pipe out of the manhole, put the valve. And they agreed that they could do that.
Okay. I don't want to belabor this, but it sounds like the problem is getting the authority approved for the easement issue.
Right.
And if there's a pipe already in place, there's no way of check valving the existing pipe and not affecting.
According to them, a lot of the existing pipes, at least the ones that they mentioned, were too deteriorated to put a valve in. And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that the valves were going to go at the street side, so they were actually going to put in a new storm drain with a valve there, and then an open pipe that runs out to the river. So we'll basically come in and stop at that valve, and it wouldn't come into the street. But that was my understanding. Yeah, so they would basically be eliminating any valve at the property owner side. So the pipe they would be laying in there would just be the inlet and outlet pipe, so there wouldn't be much maintenance. All the maintenance would be done on the street side. But if we swap it around to the point where we are using the existing pipe and we reline it and do that, then we're going to have to put a manhole on the property in the back by the river, and that might be a little bit more difficult to get through.
So like you said, this is both a safety issue and a quality of life issue for the people affected. Do you see a practical way through this?
If we could meet with the homeowners, I'd like to at least be. They walked away from the whole project. So one of the other inlet valves is in South Beach at Chris's Landing or across from Edgewater, where we know it always floods. And
there was no opposition. Yeah, there was no opposition there.
There's Quillen's property that floods all the time. and they walked away from the whole project. So I guess our worst case is try to ask them to do one or two that people aren't objecting to eliminate some of the flooding anyway that we have there during, heavy rain events.
So maybe that creates some momentum, once you kind of have dominoes falling, and maybe conversations can ensue with the others, and,
Right.
Well, thanks for your work on good luck.
Thanks.
Okay. Joe, you have anything else on your list?
Yes, we'll stay on the check valves. We're going to go out to bid for those check valves. Rich did a little research. We wanted a certain valve because we believe it works better. And, Rich determined that you can ask for what you want, but you have to put more equal in the bid specs. And if other companies don't meet your bid specs, you buy what we want. So I think that's the way we're going to proceed because it does exceed our bid limit. It isn't really a sole source supplier issue because there might be somebody in Japan or something, we don't know. So we have to bid it out. We're going to go out to bid for that, and we'll do the ones downtown by the end of this summer.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big plus on the downtown flooding. And if we talk the state into doing theirs, we've done a lot to solve those, bad rain events flooding. And there are other ongoing projects. Our transportation trust fund projects are going to be packaged and put out to bid. Recycling is another. I need to write a letter to the businesses about our decision on trash, reducing the number of containers per business, per household even. It doesn't really affect the households as much as the businesses. A question came up, do we want to continue to do the recycling, however, at those establishments? Right now, we do the recycling. Sean or Dave, do you want to add anything to that? I think that's a decision we need to make, whether we pick up recycling if we are not picking up trash waste.
Yeah, I don't have a, on that, that's totally to you guys.
I thought the agreement was just to minimize the number of cans. Not so much that we were going to stop picking up.
No, that's true, but the recycling is just a different product. We weren't tied into that through as much. Do we want to continue to pick up recycling? We're going to just say number of cans and that's it.
I think the same thing should apply. If it's recycling, it's the number of cans, and then that's it. We don't pick up any more than that. I think to try to break it up would be too onerous.
I think it's a one-time.
Treat it like we treat everybody else in that category, right? And in some cases, it's going to result in them having to have things picked up themselves by a private party, which is what kind of what we're reaching. So I would agree with Kevin. I would say put the same limits on it for recycling, what we have for everybody else in Gulf.
Okay, and I'll give them
Easy set of rules.
Give them 60 days notice, 90 days notice.
I think 90 would be more.
Okay.
It's important on that recycling that we get all of it out one way or another, rather than stack it, how we get in one business.
Right.
And that's something I think we should try and respect on a regular basis. Sometimes the accumulation of cardboard. And the other question is, with cooking oil, is that considered a recyclable, or is that goes in barrels?
Yeah, that's their obligation. They have to do, we don't do cooking oil.
Yeah, sometimes they recycle, sometimes they don't. There isn't any requirement on that, so.
That's something we should put on some sort of a checklist that's being just,
It's probably going to have to be something that we have, Tom Hague look at periodically, kind of check those out, and make sure people aren't, stacking stuff that they're not supposed to be stacking, because it is more of an ordinance issue.
it's just such a restricted area that you have any problems there.
Yeah, no, believe me, I know, I've seen it gets stacked up pretty high back there too.
Very, very good. Thank you.
Just a quick question. So, do you think we're clear to go now? The ordinance has been rewritten. I think Kevin's made a recommendation. I don't think there's any objections. I think we're on the recycling. Do you consider us clear to go?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
We're ready. I'll generate a letter and I'll visit the properties. There's not a huge amount.
Back when you're talking about the check valves in the center of town, is the DOT involved?
No.
They're not, there are lines.
Because they come out on Ocean Avenue.
No, those ones, the ones downtown are the ones that go through the bulkhead, and they're pretty much the storm drain right on the inside of the river, on the inside of the bulkhead, so it's like pretty much right there. They don't really go out to Ocean Avenue. The ones that we own don't go out to Ocean Avenue. The ones the state own run out to Ocean Avenue.
In the center of town.
Well, no, the state doesn't have any in the center of town. I don't believe so. No, we own all the ones in the center of town. The state has 5 or 6.
Yeah, they have the other ones. We're good to go. We've already done it on a lot of our storm drains. Not a lot. Church Street and Henry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, how do you differentiate between,
We own the line, and they own the other lines.
even though the entry point is on Ocean Avenue?
Yeah, but the check valve doesn't have anything to do with that. I mean, the check valve isn't going to be on Ocean Avenue. The check valve will be down line at some point in the manhole.
Because I should determine that we own that entire line.
We do.
Anything else, sir?
No, thank you.
All right, for our public safety update, I know our chief of police is here, Brad, as well.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. So I'll kind of just make this quick. I know we have a lot to talk about for updating the parking ordinance, which I think is going to take up most of the time. So I'm a little bit public. I think some of it should be an executive session too. I see that, sorry. So we did have a meeting last week with our prosecutor, myself, Brian, and Jack. He gave us some recommendations, a lot of it, some of the stuff he does with our prosecutor does Red Bank too, so we're very aware of what's a good idea and what's not a good idea. And I think at the end of the day, he was okay with some of the increases that we liked. He didn't like some of the increases. But I think the main point was don't hit your residents too hard when it comes to parking. He stressed that when it came to street sweeping tickets, really that kind of stuff. So, we'll talk about the fines maybe in executive session. I know Erwin came in that afternoon and talked to him about it, what he liked for his part. But Jim has this whole thing almost written. I'm hoping to have this thing done by the next workshop meeting. But I think we need to sit and talk about the fines and have everybody agree on the way. Have a problem increasing some. Yeah, some of them are going to be increased. We know hopefully it's going to deter people. What we spoke about, some we're going to keep them the same. But I think it's going to be more of an executive session and everybody make an agreement. Hopefully today we'll have this thing done by next month. I did get the okay from Judge Thornton to approve the $125 increase for the permanent parking tickets downtown. So that's done. That's a done deal. So everything else is something we have to look at, including parking on Ocean Avenue, whether it be half hour, whether it be an hour. I know there's some business owners here too, so you guys, it's going to affect all you hard, okay? We were a little easy the past 2 years because we had outdoor dining on Ocean Avenue. So that wasn't enforced. I don't think we're having outside dining on Ocean Avenue this summer, so. Are we? I haven't heard anything, so, so we're definitely going to be looking at to enforce that a lot more. Some of the other stuff I want to talk about in executive session, but the fireworks are looking pretty good. I had a meeting last week about it, and still moving forward, waiting for some of the permits, some of the contracts, so hopefully, Russian Figures will have 4th of July fireworks. I had our ASPCA out there tracking counts. I can't even tell how many they got, but they got a lot of them, surprised to me, which was a good thing. I also swear they put them right on downtown over here.
Thought I'm releasing my backyard.
We also had a gym meeting last week. We were there, everything went good, but most of the stuff I really want to speak to an executive session about. Say very kind of questions, right?
No, just thanks for the other. Yeah, we could meeting with that. I think the fact that part of the cost for taking it so much above it was it was the other day, right? You invited the prosecutor.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when someone does get a ticket, obviously, then they're happy to come to me first.
Yeah.
If I can't handle it, it does go to the court, and he's the first one there. So if it starts clogging up that court, we have a problem. We want to make sure that court runs smoothly, and we want to make sure that there's no sense in writing tickets if he's going to dismiss them. We want to make sure that we get the fines and get the money in. And at the end of the day, it's really, I think it's benefiting the town and downtown department, some of the businesses, the residents, probably agree. That's great. Yeah.
Thanks, Chief.
We'll talk in executive session.
Yes. All right, our fire chief, I see Chad over there.
He is.
35 calls for the month. We finished all of our compliance training for the year, so we're in compliance with all the OSHA standards that we discussed last week's chair meeting. All the apparatus repairs that I discussed in the last workshop meeting have been completed. The only thing that's still pending is the significant repairs to the ladder truck, which I noted last year. And I was waiting until the budget was adopted before I pulled the trigger on it. It's about $10,000 more. Everything else, we don't have much going on in the policy. Thank you.
All right,
Okay, cool. Next up is we're going to have another.
Are we done on the fireman's fair?
then what are we doing with the fireman's fair?
Jack, have you actually, Jack, have you discussed any further? Steve's here.
Well, I know,
Steve's here.
Steve Suarez here.
So anyway, I know part of the issue is what the DPW has to do in preparation for summer and then with the fireman's fair. So Sean, if you can at least voice your concerns and how difficult it might be to have a fireman's fair at the time that it's happening, and just to let everybody know.
My only thing is, in the past, it's timing. We have Memorial Day the following week, so we literally this week we can have to get that parking lot ready. That's bringing in new stone, rolling it out, tamping it down, painting the lines, and then setting all the parking blocks, means all those blocks have to be removed for this event. So inclement weather sets us back quite a bit if we haven't come across that. So it's a time crunch. It's been done in the past, so it's just a matter of, yeah, we can't get it done, but it puts us in a spot where we need to pray, we need to work a little hard to get that area done.
Steve, do you think next year maybe we can do a week earlier?
I can try.
Or September?
No, not September. September, all the firemen's fair things, so everything in September, they're booked. I can try a week earlier next year. I have to apologize for this because I didn't know until I went to the meeting and Mr. Booker told me this was all happening. I could have probably done something earlier and tried to manipulate it like that. One side of the meeting.
It was elsewhere.
Yeah, it was elsewhere.
We haven't had it for 2 years, we just weren't.
I mean, now this is the first time I'm hearing it's the street department. When I was met last time, we said it was the paid parking. So, I mean, I actually came down the other day to meet with Sean, to try to find Sean and try to work this out. And maybe I can get a crew from, one of our fire departments companies, something like that, to put the blocks down, to save them or something like that. Now, I'm going to say we're changing all that. It's going to be ropes and 4x4.
I'm not sure what it's going to be yet.
The curbs came up for the snow, so they're gone.
Right, they come up every year. And they come up every year just in preparation for the season and then for the fair. And it's a matter of just getting back down afterwards. I can speak to you after this.
And I should say something sooner.
I think everybody's okay with it, but maybe next year we could do a week earlier. And then that wouldn't.
Yeah, the biggest concern was just the burden to the DPW during that week, because I mean, it's a crunch. So, I mean, if you guys can work something out, I probably can't.
Well, that's for the benefit of the rest of the council. I mean, does anybody have any objections to trying to find a way forward on this and trying to get it done?
First of all, I think it's a nice thing because we want the traffic. It's a good thing for our firemen. The only thing is if it results in increased overtime costs to the town or anything, we should put that on the table so we know about that. Right.
But yeah, and that's all unexpected until time off. We don't know that till week of with weather and manpower.
And big part.
Yeah.
And the impact on paid parking.
There's a slight overlap of paid parking this year, and it can be addressed next year more carefully. But I think overall, I think the majority is in favor of this already.
But I mean, the fair would bring people to town. We're not checking the paid parking. It's going to bring people to town. We're going to pay the parking to go to the fair. So that's like, it's just that little section that's not stoned over here. I mean, the little section that's stoned over here. That's the only problem. That's the only part we're going to use.
So anybody else have anyone opposed? Anybody having any issues with this? I know we've discussed it a few times. It's kind of, we can definitely promote it in the next mail. We're going to be putting out a all-time mailer pretty soon, so with the dates and everything, we'll get the word out. But any other concern anybody has? Well, Steve's here.
Steve,
How it works?
how many vendors are in place? Can this be moved to the back parking lot?
I can move it anywhere. I mean,
To the other gravel lot?
in 2008, I started this to bring people to Seabright, and one of the things they told me was you can't bring, any. I don't have any. I had one food truck. The guy started Tony Sausage, and then I had Shalongo's for a little bit. There's no Mexican restaurant in Seabright, and then I had the Station One Seafood. My whole objective was to bring people to Seabright, drop their kids off, and go out and go to the restaurants in Seabright. So I never had a whole bunch of food trucks. I didn't have an ice cream truck because the ice cream, I never wanted to interfere with any of the business, in Seabright. But, since the dynamics of Seabright's changed, that parking lot, trying to get in there, that Saturday night was a zoo, there's not, we can move it anywhere, there's nothing. The only problem is there's electric over there. We have to have electric pole over there, that's where you can run off of a generator. Every light up there has an electric outlet.
Does it make sense to everyone's agreement? Does it make sense to allow this particular conversation to go offline and work out the details? I think that there's consensus that we'd like to find a way to do this. So, but if some of the details have to be ironed out, and if you need input or whatever have you, let us know. I'd like to see us moving forward and allow the details and answers.
So, if you don't have any opposition, you think that you guys could work something out, and I have no issues with it.
No, I'm pretty much no time crunch for what happened today.
Yeah. Well, that's why we had it on here. You want to get it, check that box as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I just came up with sense. I'm under the impression it was a paid parking issue and stuff like that, so I just threw it.
The only problem with moving it over here is then we'll be taking the numbered spots over there, not numbered, if we move it around, it's the only other issue, so it's paid parking.
Steve, what is the proposed date for this? Okay.
May 19th, 20th, 21st, or something. The weekend before, it's always been the weekend before Memorial Day.
Thanks for coming in. Give me a call. I know you can work with details, so give me a call for anything you say.
This is now where we agreed to move ahead.
And next year, I'll look at moving a week early. Okay.
We agreed to move.
I think we're all good then. Thank you, gentlemen.
You say?
Anything else, somebody else under public safety before we move on? Any other topics? All right, thanks everyone. All right, moving on to our ongoing discussion regarding cannabis. So the backstory here for anyone who knows that last year the state permitted up to one license per town. In Seabright, if we did allow for it, it would be a vetting process, approval process. When the state released the rules, the governing body majority should be inclined to permit that up to one license in town, but there really was very little state guidance on how to accomplish that. So we didn't act on it then. We have Nick spoke to our council, he's a proponent of having a carry-out cannabis shop in town, and I know he was to speak briefly to us again, so we accepted his request to come in and speak to us. So Nick wanted to speak to this.
Sure. I have a presentation that I'm actually going to get out all these follow up.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nick Frangipani, 1136 Ocean Ave, apartment 203. Myself, along with business partner James Whalen, are the owners of Melonhead, a health food cafe here in town, operating for over 6 years. We're here today to discuss cannabis. Along with us is our cannabis consultant team, Tanisha Victor and James Montijo, who have extensive knowledge in the industry and experience guiding municipalities to file their cannabis resolutions.
They are here to discuss why cannabis will be beneficial to the Seabright community and why the town should consider J&N Ventures for the Class 5 cannabis dispensary license. I'll let Tanisha take it from here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tanisha Victor. Born and raised in New Jersey from West Long Branch originally. Graduated from Shore Regional in 2008. Went on to college, went to Rutgers, graduated in 2012, and hopped right into cannabis from there. I worked in 8 different markets, both adult use and medical. Worked in many co-located locations. I worked in all facets from retail to cultivation to production. My focus has been on primarily building out the locations and then operating them for over the span of my career. I worked on a lot of different social equity and social justice programs that I've rolled out in many states to make the programs very equitable, diverse, and inclusive. So I'll hop right in. So as you know, these guys are super local. Nick himself lives right here in Seabright. They've been great citizens all along. They follow the rules. They've operated here for many years. Some things that we would be doing if allowed to be in Seabright and given licensure is, and these are programs that I've rolled out before in the past successfully. So just for some background, over the past 3 years while I've been in cannabis, I've been working primarily on the medical implications. So I've been running IRB-approved research studies on opioid reduction, autism, and quality of life. And during those years, in my findings and connections that I've made in the pharmaceutical side of cannabis and understanding those medical implications, there have been extensive research on the benefits of certain cannabinoid profiles and terpene profiles when used in conjunction with CBD and some of the others, those other cannabinoids, and of course THC, that can actually help the reduction of opioid use and hopefully eliminate it entirely. So one of the programs that we would be bringing to Seabright and to this prospective dispensaries would be actually serving as an incubator for some of those lower THC, higher CBD strains that help wean people off of opioids and hope to eliminate that entirely. Some of the other programs that we bring in is we work with accredited universities in the state of New Jersey. NJIT and Stockton University both have minors in cannabis, and we would serve as an incubator essentially, where interns would come in and they would work with the stores and they'd be able to educate the community, they'd be able to educate our staff on those medical implications of cannabis. Because though some people, though this is an adult use market, a lot of people still need cannabis for medical reasons, even those using recreationally. Like myself, I am a licensed gun holder. I cannot have a medical card in the state of New Jersey. Though there are medical implications for myself and personal medical issues that I have that cannabis benefits, I'm not able to have a medical card here in New Jersey, so I would be an adult use shopper of cannabis in the state. So that's just for example. Some of the other programs that we want to roll out are a mentorship program, which is currently existing with THC Staffing Group, and they would help bring diverse individuals into a pipeline program, and we would train them on just professional development tools and resources within cannabis, and teaching them how to get into cannabis. They would work in the store, and then they can go on to work in other places as well. So always the largest concern, I'd say, in cannabis is security, right? So on site, I always promote, and I discussed, of course, with Nick and Jim, that ex-law enforcement, so retired police officers, retired Seabright police officers, welcome to the front of the line to come and work in the stores, retired military, and in my 10 years of experience, I haven't had one security breach on site in any of the probably 80 some odd facilities that have been under my belt in my tenure. And that's because of stringent security standards. These operations are, 40 plus cameras on site, 24/7 surveillance, secured access. We'd even be open to having the police department have access to reach into the cameras if they'd like. The CRC, which is the regulatory body, actually has that access and is able to see into the camera system or the secured access. The product is kept in the DEA cage, so a lot of people think that, cannabis shop, retail, that you can just go in and pick and pack your own items. Everything is packed in the bag. It's ordered at point of sale. There's visible menus, TVs. People, when you order at point of sale, it's packed in the bag and then brought out to you in a closed container. Everything is child resistant and opaque. Nothing is visible to the public, and then you're let out by security. Authorized visitor management, so anybody entering the facility needs pre-approval that vendors or anybody who is not actually coming to shop needs pre-approval to enter the facility, and they are guided around the entire time. The prevention of minors from purchasing cannabis. Again, with the security measures in place, there's always security sitting at the front of before you even enter. Everything's secured access, as I mentioned, so you need to be fobbed into the facility to even make it in to be able to shop. There are scanners, ID scanners that they use, similar to what they would use at nightclubs, and obviously police officers are the most well-versed on being able to identify if somebody is under the age of 21, and then they would be unable to shop, and we utilize that software, as I mentioned, and also do extensive electronic age verification training for all security guards. So yeah, does anybody have any questions on anything preliminary? I'd love to answer. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I have a question. Is Seabright the location you're looking at the class 5 or any location?
We're looking at only Seabright for class 5, yes. And obviously, I didn't even mention the 2% green tax that the town gets. So just for a basic metric, I know towns currently that have medical dispensaries, I'll give you Woodbridge, for instance, that town is collecting $20,000 per quarter as a green tax right now in the medical market, just in the medical market. They said this market is said to be a $1 billion market by 2025. And I'd love to see Seabright be a part of collecting that green tax.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I learned a lot actually listening to it.
Great, thank you.
One of the things that we've been discussing and struggling with is understanding what is the best estimate for the revenue for the town for the tax.
Sure.
And in your business model, you must have figured that out yourself, right, to come to us and ask for this. So recognizing the fact that there are adjacent towns that have licenses,
Right.
which means people may not come to our town today. The fact that we have a relatively small population that swells tremendously during the season. What does your model indicate is likely to be the annual revenue for your business? Or give us an estimate of what that will result in
Sure.
in tax revenue.
I'll give you an example. So in Nantucket, Massachusetts, which I would equate to being a similar sized town, and as well as very seasoned. So there's one dispensary in town, and they do about $30 million in top line revenue, and we do so $30 million in top line revenue, and so we'll call that probably, it could potentially bring upwards of potentially $1 million in taxes to Seabright annually on the high end, and then on the mid-range end, and probably around $600,000 to $800,000. And
Do you have, and this is, I know why I get this question, but this is an important part of our consideration. I've seen projections that kind of all over the place.
Absolutely.
Because it's emerging, you have to look at more mature markets and what's happening there.
Absolutely.
Similar sized towns, et cetera. Can you share with us, as you're asking us for a letter of support, I'm assuming with your application, can you share with us, and not today, some point quickly, your financial projections?
Sure.
Based on the business plan, of course you do. So in there, I imagine you'll have revenue in the 2% municipal levy, what that's likely to generate, et cetera. So if we can see your financial projections.
we'd be happy to share those. Yes, definitely. At a later date, we'd definitely be happy to share those. And to your point, where you were saying there are other markets that are allowing it. So there are moratoriums in place in Rumson, Little Silver, not Shrewsbury, they haven't opted out formally, but it's going to be difficult for somebody to enter into Shrewsbury. All of those towns are going to keep their moratoriums in place. Long Branch is allowing it, but the zoning map doesn't match their ordinance, so it's actually really complicated for people to be able to find locations there. Long Beach will never have it. There's also a delivery license, so people will be delivering in. And one thing in particular to keep in mind is how you differentiate yourself in a saturated market is product differentiation. With the connections that I have in New Jersey and the connections that Nick has in New Jersey within cannabis, we'll be able to really differentiate the menu offerings, which would help draw people to come to Seabright to shop.
Two less quick things for me.
Sure.
I guess just one main thing. So as you know, other people have come forward and asked for this.
Absolutely.
Right? And there are a limited number of licenses that will be granted. So if the council and the town decides to go forward with this, it means that we have confidence in the projections financially.
Absolutely.
You said you're willing to provide.
Yeah.
And that's very important to us because that's going to be key in our decision. But if we have confidence in those projections and the council is in favor of doing this, then we also want to have somebody who's likely to get licensed.
Absolutely.
Right? And there are differentiations and different criteria for getting licensed.
Yes.
You will know better than I do.
Yes.
So what is it that about your team that leads you to believe you have a good chance of getting such a license?
Well, first, my experience of 10 years and being from New Jersey, I've actually already won a license in the state of New Jersey with the previous company that I worked for, MPX. That's a brand that I helped build from the beginning. Actually, I worked with the Stivalls on that headquarter in town in Jersey, of course. So that was kind of where I started my career. So that's really what they're going to look for, right? People with highly regulated backgrounds. So Jim and Nick both come from highly regulated backgrounds, given that they've worked in construction for many years. So those are all parallels that they're really looking for. They want to open this round for more local individuals. The first three rounds rather. So the initial round was given to some larger groups, and it's now all of those larger multi-state operators are already here. The second round they gave to another group of MSOs in 2019. They started to get a little bit more local, and this round is going to be specifically geared to entrants and people who live here locally. Just from my connections and discussions that I had with the Cannabis Regulatory Commission in the past, I carry a close relationship with that. Not that that says that. Yeah. No problem.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Providing your projections, I think, is the key.
Okay. So
Because
that's
one of the things that a lot of us want to understand is projection of the tax.
absolutely.
So please do that as a resolution.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Sorry, I don't have it on me, but I can provide you my contact.
Anything in your contact?
No, you can catch the guys, but I will.
Thank you. Can you reach out to Christine to get her disseminate that information and share it? Thank you.
That's what another comment to ask going on. So moving on to the bulkhead ordinance amendment. We discussed in the past, so this is relating to the property, bulkheads in town that we identified for single repair or replacement. Some of them, of course, include part of the so they were part of this. But in light of the time frames, a very quick time frame to have the approvals and construction completed or renovations made, and we also have our own bulkheads to contend with. And we wanted to provide some relief to anyone who's on that list. And so that's what we're doing. That's what the amendment is all about. So I don't know if Rich wants to speak to that first or Joe.
So with the amendment, what you should keep in mind is that what you see in the draft amendment, there is one part of the bulkhead ordinance. The rest of it maintains the same. So all the things that are otherwise in there about definitions, what's in there about penalties, what's in there about municipal liens, all stays in the ordinance. None of that changes. The things that changing is the section on engineer inspections. That section saying that the engineer will inspect the bulkheads, and that he finds and determines that the correct plan has to be filed, and then the consequences if they aren't, the consequences, but rather time frames, really the things that are changing, in terms of repair and replace. So it's an increase, 90 days for the corrective plan filing that, 6 months for repairs, and a year for replacement. But so those are the changes, but everything else will be the same.
And part of the reason we're making this amendment is due to the timeframes. We spoke with our engineers, and folks felt that the timeframes to do these projects are a little short. So we're going to, due to supply chain issues, cost issues, the cost increase in material, that sort of thing. So that's one of the reasons why we're amending it. We're pushing it out a little bit, and it's specifically to say, okay, we spoke with our engineers, and they said this is a fair amount of time to make this adjustment and to get these projects in place and started and completed. So,
And our engineer, Greg, are also able to speak to it. Last meeting, we talked about a different way of getting this accomplished with creating an assessment district. And I just prepared a little handout for everybody, showing the pros and cons of the doing the assessment district. And I think the biggest thing the assessment district will provide you is you control the project timeline. And you also control, when it's going to be done, how it's going to be done, and who's going to do it. Versus if you give everybody individually to do it, you're going to have a dozen or so contractors, depending on the price on it. But it also might, the other advantage to it, the big advantage, is you might have a situation where a lot of individual homeowners can't afford it. And that's why they're dragging their feet and getting this done. The assessment district will put it in the hands of the borough. The borough will borrow the money, the financing costs. That would all be put back to the homeowner assessment over a 5 or 10 year period, depending on what you decide to do. But it makes it much more palatable for each individual homeowner. And it kind of takes them out of the element of something they're not used to doing. The borough would then be liable for getting the permitting, letting out the contract, doing the inspections. It will all be done in-house, and they would just have to pay for it. Versus them having to go out and do it all solve visually.
Well, do note though, that if the borough does do that the cost increase would be considerable because we would have to pay prevailing wages. So that's almost 3 times what a normally costs.
Yeah, probably not like that high, but it's probably a good double.
Yeah, at least twice what it would normally cost a homeowner to fix the problem. If we do it, it's going to cost twice as much. So, it might be spread out over 5 years,
but you also
it's still double. So.
But it probably wouldn't be double if you didn't economy scale it, because the guy's going to come in instead of doing a 50-foot or 75-foot stretch, he's going to do block. You're going to let out his contract in a block, so he may do 600 or 700 feet for a much cheaper price to come in. Right. Because it's probably not even double.
Yeah, I do take consideration. It's basically a once in a lifetime, unexpected potential costs as well. So it's, and we all know roughly what these bulkheads can cost. To repair a little place, I know people will replace the bulkheads. So it's pricey as hell. So I think it's just a good option to consider for anyone who, maybe forced to repair a place and have one house to go.
Yeah, because I think one of the biggest problems you have in the long run is if you have a situation where 9 out of 10 people are bulkhead and one doesn't, it's as if no bulkheads there at all from a flooding point of view. So that's where I think the control from the borough point is an advantage.
Well, inevitably that may happen because we may have some property owners that just don't have the money and don't do it. So it might be at a point where we're forced to get to that point and handle it anyway. So this is good to have the pros and cons for that option if we have to go that route.
Thank you, Robert. The next item, number 5, is actually going to be carried over to executive session where it probably belongs to the discussion. Ongoing discussion with Woodies about purchasing the patio area in front of the building, so we'll carry that over to our executive session today.
Sorry, sir.
We're going to carry over these areas for 5 in the executive session. Item number 6, this is just a public works has been working with the Highlands for a shared service agreement for street sweeping. I don't know if Joe or Sean, you're always on the spot, Sean. Either one of you gentlemen will speak to that.
Sean and Public Works has been meeting with Highlands to see if they would be agreeable to a shared service. I think the service would be the same as currently.
Correct. Same service. Right now, if we kept the contract, it'd be $22,000 for the season through CNL, which CNL actually denied the contract because of being cheap on their end. So they agreed to deny it. Got a shared service agreement coming in from Highlands for $15,000 for them to do same service, same schedule, and they're right here. So I think it'll be we'll see a lot more improvement on the street itself.
Yeah, that's right. Anytime we do a shared service like that works.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk to Mike Bascom about if there's a way, because we charge Highlands to do their lifeguarding in the summer. There may be a lessening of their fee. There may be a way that it benefits both Highlands and Seabright if it's practical.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, just a quick question. Have we kind of taken a look at the quality of service over there? Are we comfortable with the people of that?
I strong feeling better.
We've had that here before.
Yeah.
You have a new director over there. He's got control of that department and updated machine. Last year we've had issues with the machine breaking down. Hydraulic oil all over the place. Largely you can attest to this. I think it was 3 times where we had a county come in, hazmat team come in for hydraulic issues with their trucks. So we had a new truck, a different truck, more updated truck. I think we'll see a big difference.
If we have an unusual event, like storm winds or sand on the roads, are they responsible for that, or do you guys take care of that?
Both. How it currently works with the past contract is that we had an emergency service contract with them. Well, the same thing set up with Highlands. I'm sure whatever we're going through, they're going through, so they're operating will be already in place. Timing, we'll probably get a super out here within the same amount of time as the private contractor did, because of where the contractors come from and other contracts that contractors has to deal with as well. So I don't think we'll see a loss of any type of service at all.
And the fact they did it in the past, you're comfortable with that capacity?
Correct.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, on to the 2022 sidewalk cafe permit question. This says this has nothing to do with what we did the last 2 years with the DOT approval on this is not about dining in the parking space on Ocean Ave. This is just a sidewalk cafe permits.
And Chris and Michelle have put together your package, what our current rules are. We tend to drift from those rules. We're going to try to keep up with it again. There has to be clear space for the general public to walk through. And in all fairness, we require a diagram from everyone. They have to adhere to that diagram, but sometimes when you look at the diagram and see what's out on the street, it's different. If it's different, we talked about last year, if we have to go more than a couple times, we'll revoke the sidewalk permit. Because in all due respect, everybody puts tables down. I don't want to say them out. But you don't see chairs on any of the diagrams. You know, they all look like they're up against the wall, when in reality, the person that sits there is sitting, out in front waiting, and the sidewalk tends to reduce. And that's our biggest complaint. And that's our biggest problem from the general public, that, at some points they have to walk out in the street, they can't get through, and we can't allow that to happen. So it'll be in their permit, they're going to have to adhere to the permit or
It's already slow. We all saw it ourselves the last 2 years, especially 2020, from my perspective, the whole cover, we had a lot more issues. Police love going out all the time, having to respond to complaints, and you can walk away with it. But I think this might pass a little better, actually, from my perspective. But it's just something that we really just need to maintain. We want to work with businesses, as always, just make sure they have, they expand this a little bit, have the side street dining, which is great. I mean, it's subtle dining. But really, just a matter of keeping that walkway open. It's just for ADA, just for anyone walking by or going. We do get a lot of complaints. So just, keep it simple approach. Whatever the vendor approves is going to maintain it. And we really hate having police that don't want to go out there and have to people of business owners make sure they're fine.
Chief, what's the minimum clear space? I think 4 feet. 4 feet. It has to be 4 feet. So just make sure. We have less than 4 feet. You're gonna get the chief coming out there and knocking on your door. So
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, the next one is a twofold, interface bulkhead. So on the riverside there are two, one request is to allow a visitor onto the fresh area. They had to get approvals from the state and possibly Army Corps, but they're asking for our approval to do that, and also I guess this condition of the bulkhead is to follow a bulkhead. It's on our list of repairs. We need repair, and then I was thinking, John, John, you want to speak to this call? I know John is going to.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the Navigation Arena, on the south end, there are large boat slips, and as that boat would pull out, there's I'll call it a sandbar for lack of a better word, but it's very shallow, so those boats have a hard time pulling out. And I think you all know Mr. McQuillan, he's there in the audience, and his concern is can he rent those spaces to boats of that size if they can't navigate, yet he doesn't own the area that's impeding the marina, so he can't really do much about it. He wants to work with the town. Maybe we get together with a little think tank and figure out, we're going to work on bulkheads. Where does that one fit in? It's one of ours. And it's also offending, his business to some extent. So I thought that, he's here, I don't know if he has other comments, but we would like to get together, figure out what are the steps. I did check on some of the rules and regulations. I don't know if we have records, but if there are records that we've done anything in that area before, that helps your case as opposed to filing a brand new never touched space. So there would be some research to be done, and then bring in the right stakeholders for CAFR and DOT to work together to see if we can solve this mutual concern.
So John, just to clarify, the marina owner is willing to put up the money to correct this problem as long as we're willing to work with them to get the proper permits and get the proper government entities involved and all that. Is that what we're looking at?
I don't know that, because I don't know what that fee is, or even if it's possible, right? I did speak to some people in the stakeholders at the state level to see what's the reality of being able to do something like this. And to some extent, it's cumbersome, right, to get the project going. So being that we're going to be touching our piece, I thought if we collectively work on it, we'll figure out what's our part, is there any work in the marina, and then see how we take that forward.
I'm going to talk to Greg, Greg research that for us to see what was required on our part.
My name is Chuck McQuillan. I'm the managing member of the entity that owns the marina. This whole thing goes back to Sandy. At the end of the street, the bulkhead the town is responsible for, I believe, had holes in it. The county, after Sandy, were dropping sand from the street and dropping it there. And every time there was a high tide, the pile would go down and down, and it would right out in front of the area that's like a little island now, which is preventing us from, it's got to be high tide for a boat to go in and out of there.
But I don't know if we have the right area rights to that there. It just is maybe a little more cumbersome more than it already is. The marina and most property owners own their riparian rights in front of the water. I don't know where our riparian is. We may stop at the bulkhead, so research that. So Greg may have to do a little homework.
I don't know who was responsible for the sand, right? If you extended every place out 50 yards or something, because that's where our marina
We'll have to look at our riparian rights. If the borough doesn't have riparian rights, then we don't own them. If we do get a riparian right, we have the right to judge.
Yeah, who would own it?
State.
All state. All right.
So
So I had to talk to the state.
Is that something you're?
We're about looking to see if there's a pairing race there, but I don't know what's the deal with what we have. We'll figure out what we got and just come back and step two.
We have a grant.
Not gonna be a fast process, I understand.
We have a grant on most of our marina, and that part of it is running north up until our dock. We have a grant on that to release the water. Yeah, the land under the water, south of that, north of that.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Thank you. Get back to the spread research for you. We have a unique application here, GG's, they're interested, so they don't do this POV, they don't have a liquor license, but there's an opportunity for them to do wine tasting there and then sell bottles of wine. They can't serve alcohol except for the wine tasting. This is approved, but they want to just have us consider that and it's open for discussion.
Anyone here from? I don't know what the details are, so, Joe.
Well, Denny first.
I don't really know that many details about their situation, but these licenses work in a way that they apply to them with the state. They've been approved, the winery basically still applies. And we don't really have say in it.
Yeah, that's with our impression we look at it. It's the fact that
They're letting us know as a courtesy.
No, please.
We have any horrible objections.
Sorry?
They're letting us know as a courtesy.
Yeah, so it's a facet of how you pay license, which you normally do is you do type C licenses for retail. The type A is manufacturing. So there's a provision in the statute that says that a winery, they can only sell on their premises, but also if they make less than, I forget exactly, I want to say 250,000 gallons, somebody said 6 months a year, they can also apply for the showrooms, and they can sales rooms, sorry, not showrooms, sales rooms. And so they can have them in places and sell their wine at these sales rooms, which I guess would be a display. And yeah, the state makes a call on it, but they have to let the municipality know and have your comment on it, let the director of the division of alcohol beverage control know your position. But the state does make a call on it.
We had one in Wall, and it didn't make sense. They didn't have, it wasn't such great wine, so they kind of left, but it was, it didn't really work. It was in a deli as well, and they left on their own accord. But you do have to buy the whole bottle. It's not, they can't serve you the bottle. They can't have a corking fee of opening it or anything, I don't believe. I don't think there's a corking fee allowed, so, but it is a state license, and
It doesn't sound much different than the BYO that they currently have, to be honest.
So if I could just add, I happened to talk to Kelly yesterday at GE's on this, and what she explained to me, because I think you covered it, is basically the bottles, they have to buy the cases are put there, they're put on display, and they make very little money on the actual wine itself. What it is, it's an opportunity for their patrons to have wine in their restaurant without a normal transaction or sale. They have very little to do with it. I was amazed this is actually something you can do, because I'm surprised if you can. It's not done more often in other places. But it sounds like it's sort of drop it off. If you want to buy it, you can. There's minimal markup by the merchant. And then there's a debit that actually happens. They have to buy the whole, and then they get credit for whatever they sold that month or the month after. So it's an interesting phenomenon and how it works, and we should describe it. But unique.
They have a similar license for boutique breweries too, correct? So
There is a brewery license in some, there is.
something like that. It's like you can only sell on premises or something.
And I guess, Chris, did you say, or maybe Richard, you said this can effectively be done without any approval from us? Is that?
The state makes a call. You have an opportunity to voice your concerns and comments, and they have to go by the ordinance in terms of hours and when they can sell, but the state makes a call.
Interesting.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, the next item is, is, if I understand it correctly, I spoke with Joe about it. Basically, there's potentially additional federal funding for additional regional planning and Seabright fall this year through spring of 2023. And as far as right now, there isn't even a cost share with us.
Well, two things. One, they received, it's in your package, they received federal funding, or the federal funding was allocated for that. They're going to start surveying to make sure that our template, which is the profile of the beach from Sandy Hook to Barnegat Bay, they're going to survey, so they want us to know, one, you're going to see surveying people out on the beach, and that's what it's for. And they said if they told us what the current share is, where we pay 25%, we always apply to the county for half. But they said there is a potential for that to be eliminated if the funding is correct, or if they have enough funding. There would not be a local share. But they always let us know before we say yes to do it. So I think it's just notification that, what is it, 22 or 23?
All 22.
Yeah,
So $24 million from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I guess it employs people that come to sand.
Yeah, that's why we do the same thing every time.
Sandy Hook to Barnegat Inlet, and it's to prevent storm damage reduction. And it says that they go on to remind us what our normal participation is, and then it says if a non-federal cost share is required, a new estimated cost share will be provided. So there may be none, it may be reduced, and you still have that call if you want replenishment.
Yeah, especially if there's no cost share, it's always a no-brainer. I mean,
Right, something we definitely have to do. So.
yeah, replenishment and public access.
But they also say they use quads out on the beaches to do this. I hope they're aware of plovers. So
They usually start after the fall, that's why they can do it.
The last time we got sand, it was a freebie, and we didn't have any contribution to it.
they didn't bill us yet, but
Come back to the
right, it had been a while. I understand that, yes, they did.
We definitely need it. I just wish they would do something different instead of doing what they do all the time, because it's broken. You know, I mean, as soon as they put it down, it's back to where they took it from again before the next season, summer season starts.
So luckily, we get some on the beaches, though, and then.
Well, I mean, that's what, yeah, exactly. Well, you know, it's just, they start on the south end and work north. So it's like pumping sand upstream because it's just going right back into the hook. If you started at the hook and just brought the hook down, I think it would stick around a little longer, but they don't.
Once the sand gets on the hook, it stays.
Exactly. It just right back up again. It's a typical government thinking. Let's take sand out of this hole and put it in that hole, and you guys take sand out of that hole and put it in that hole. It's just back and forth. So, but whatever. Keeps you employed.
This is a notification to us about the potential already seen survey and do stuff done by us in South Beach.
That's different. That's not this one.
Oh, is it?
That's the state DEP doing that.
But it did say Army Corps of Engineers, but they probably use their boat.
They might.
Yeah.
It was because we got a call from our contacts up there that they were figuring out what was lost over the winter.
And I know at the start, I mean, it sounds like we'd never say no unless the price was provided within the 40. But what is typical when we have to do a national review job like that?
Last time was like $400,000 or $600,000.
Because according to the attachment, it's going to be pretty quick, like maybe over this winter.
Yeah, they usually do it between, like it says, it starts in the fall of 22, and it'll be done by spring, by April, at the latest April, May.
So hopefully, if the value is equal or lower, we'll be giving a thumbs up to the middle gas and standards, mostly paid for by somebody else.
Right. I think you've always accepted it.
Yeah.
Unlike some other counties, Monmouth County, which is in.
Monmouth County splits our share. They have in the past. They have to get it in their budget as well, but they have in the past. So we're down at like 12.5%.
Very good.
So, those are just, as always, a list of upcoming resolutions you will review on the next agenda. We do have an executive session today. We have a couple items to discuss. in that. So that being said, that would be the end of the public portion of this workshop. So we're not going to discuss anything further after executive session. Yes, Dr.
Well, I had asked for time to give an update on the activities of the Administration and Shared Services Committee. I can either do that now or in executive or your presence.
That's whatever, if there's anything that's required.
Well, I think it would be interesting for the public to hear some of that.
Let's do that.
So let's go through this. Before I do that, I want to thank Chris and several of the staff members. Yesterday, they did a tremendous job for us. They came down to the Oakborough Hall and they dispositioned the rest of the boxes that were down there to allow the Recreation Committee and John Langley was doing, Councilman Langley was doing work down there to get ready for that floor to be sanded and converted to a usable basketball court, pickleball, and other things going forward. So Chris, thank you very much for what you did yesterday. We really appreciate that. Okay, so a couple things. What we want to do here is, and I'll be as quick as I can as a handout, but we have an Administrative and Shared Services Committee which covers a bunch of topics. I chair that committee, but also on that committee are Jeff, Kevin Birdsall, Chris is on it, Joe Baruni is on it. We held 3 meetings through the first quarter. And what we did in our meetings, we basically sat down. I'm new to the council, so for me this was part of it was education, was to learn what was going on in that committee already and then what did we want to carry forward. So the approach that we took, we said in Q1, the thing we want to do is we want to identify and prioritize our goals for the year. What are the things that matter for this committee and what do we want to do? Do that through the first 3 months, and in our 3 meetings, we got to that and we'll share that with you in a minute. In Q2, we wanted to develop our rollout and action plan and make sure we were coordinated with any other committees because some of the things we do in administration and shared services touch other committees. So we want to make sure we understand that and they're linked appropriately so that we're doing it in a coordinated way. And then in Q3 and Q4, implement those activities, status them, and then adjust as needed to determine are they working or not working, what do we have to do differently, and do we want to carry it into next year. So what we did is we talked about probably 10 or 12 things to focus on. And the top 4 that we came up with that we felt were important for the committee to focus on was, first of all, ordinance enforcement in targeted areas. I'm going to talk more about each one of these. But we have a number of ordinances we put in there for a reason. They're not always as effective because they're not enforced as we would like them to be. So to any rise to the top that we want to spend more time on. The second thing was around data records and retention, disposition things that we have right now, and to streamline stuff going forward. So we have thousands of pounds of records that we're obligated to keep as a town. And the question is, do we have to keep them all? Can we get rid of them? It really is all about space for us, space and cost. So what can we do differently? And in that process, how can we transition to electronic going forward so we produce less paper that we have to worry about down the road? Interestingly enough, I've learned that we have sort of 3 periods of time we have to save things. 7 years, 75 years, and forever. So we have things that we have to look at and determine if each one of those had to do. And typically, if something you have it for 6 years, you're not going to scan it and save it because next year you can throw it away. So with the limited space we have here, it's something that we felt was important. Personnel policies and procedures put in a little bit more robust method of measuring employee performance, providing constructive feedback, making sure they have the training they need, understanding their career aspirations, and putting in succession plans for critical staff if we feel we have an issue, if somebody's ultimately going to retire and move on to something else. And the last one that's on here, obviously, is critically important. Support is required from the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Panel on Education and Alignment. I won't go through that in any detail, but I think everybody's aware of the fact there's a realignment activity being looked at right now. And the mayor's committee to do that has got to be a top priority for us because it would result in better education and lower taxes for our people in town. So on each one of these, I'm just going to spend a couple minutes. I appreciate your indulgence. On ordinance enforcement, for us, it's about driving the right kind of behavior that we want in town. People try to do the right thing, but we want to make sure it's enforced where it needs to be. So the 3 questions we asked ourselves: is the ordinance important enough and worthy of additional enforcement? If it's working fine or it's not that important, we won't bother with it. Is the ordinance adequately defined so that we can enforce it, or does it need to be improved? If you go to enforce an ordinance and someone can hold it up and it's got holes in it, you got a problem. So we got to make sure it's adequately defined in those documents. And then understanding what resources we'll take to enforce the ordinance to an acceptable level. Because if you say you're going to do it, but it requires us to hire 10 more policemen or something else, we've got to be cognizant of that. So making sure we understand that. So from that, we listed all the ordinances, at least that group, that we felt were worthy of discussion, to determine which of those we would actually rise to the top and try to do something with. Things we talked about: dogs on the beach, parking control, restaurant outdoor seating, garbage pails, snow removal, plastic control, short-term rentals, abandoned property, bulkheads. Police department has a couple they struggle with: open alcohol, disorderly behavior, and unfortunately public urination. So we went through all of those, and we kind of said, of the ones we have, which would we elevate because we think they're most critical to the town? Not that the other ones aren't important, we will get to them in later phases, but which ones will we start with? And the three that we chose, and the reason I'm doing this, Mayor, is to make sure that the council is aware, because if we're missing the mark, we would appreciate feedback from the rest of the council, because remember, Q2, we're going to start doing things, and we want to make sure we're heading in the right direction. So the three things that we picked was parking control, and you heard earlier that the police department is revamping the parking ordinance, and they have briefed that to the administration committee, which we appreciate. They've also done it with the public safety committee, which we appreciate, because those are the ones that we believe it touches. So that's good, because they're updating that ordinance, and what we want to do is make sure we enforce it effectively. The second one is short-term rentals. We've had a lot of discussion in town about Airbnbs and what we want to do with it. We believe it's a good thing for the town, but it's got to be controlled in certain ways because we get out of hand. The administration committee that we are on took the action to advance that one by getting the right people together, and we are going to do that. And then the third one on there is around bulkheads. And obviously, bulkheads are critical for the safety from storm flooding and things of that nature, but it's also the other ordinance that we're updating right now. So the timing of this seems to be very good, because if the ordinances are adopted and put in place anew, we're in a position to then try to enforce them in the town. So I'll just pause there, Mayor, for a second, because if there's any major concern or feedback from anybody on the council, I want to know if we're heading in the wrong direction.
Do you have any questions on Ordinance 8?
I've noticed actually the snow removal and focus on for the next fall.
Okay. Okay, moving on. The second one, data records and retention. This is all about cost and space requirements. We have limited space requirements. You heard us say that we're going to take the overall hall and convert it to a rec center, which I think is going to be an outstanding thing for the town, for our kids. And I think the team's doing a great job there. And John Lamia has coordinated and climbed the Derby with 100 families coming to town next month, which I think is going to be exciting. And like it's been talked about before, when you have 100 kids come into town with their race cars, the parents come in, they go to Alice's, and they go to Yoke's, and all those kind of things. So as we advance that rec center, it's a good thing. So getting material out of there and making it usable was very constructive, and that's what I was talking about, Chris helping me yesterday. So what we said for this particular one is provide an estimate of the volume that can be destroyed. What can we get rid of that? And the team has done a phenomenal job in this area already, because when they moved from the old borough hall to here, they had paid space constraints, and they've probably fixed 90% of this problem already. We want to get the other 10%. Assess the volume of the records that need to be retained. Why do we have to, and how long do we have to retain them? Then obtain a cost to scan and digital conversion for the material, so where appropriate, we can convert it and save it digitally instead of in boxes, right, for the future. And interestingly enough, as Chris has been on this committee working this issue, she found a particular case that we were paying for a service to the county for $3,500 a year that we haven't used in years. So we didn't even need it. So Chris has canceled that, and just that one step is a $3,500 win for us in what she's working with the team. And then the last element here is reach out to each of the department heads to identify steps that they can take to reduce paper production going forward. By the way, in our finance committee meeting, we learned that we pay a very, very high price per page in this town, because we pay for a service contract with the copier company, we pay per copy cost to them, and we pay for the paper. So anything we can do to go digital is going to help us going forward. So each of the department heads is going to be asked to take a look at this to determine, is there a way that they can, we're not trying to make them convert everything going backwards, but going forward, right, we'll be happy if we can make this transition over time. And when I was talking, I was pointed to Brett in the police department, so I went down and asked Brett about paper versus electronic, and the interesting thing is they've gone 100% electronic in the police department. So one of our departments now is already there. Brett told me the story that when they need paper, they go borrow it from somebody else in the office. So that's a sign that they're not printing a lot of stuff. So that's a department that's already moved in that direction, which is really good news. In the area of personnel policies and procedures, ensure that we have adequate performance assessment, feedback, training, development, and succession plans. everywhere we work, we hope to be a good process for this, right? So you can give people feedback, you can give them credit where it's deserved, corrective input if necessary, and also a number of our staff are not, they can be retiring in a couple of years. We don't want to be left in the lurch when they decide to go. So putting all that together, we had a number of steps that we wanted to do. First of all, what policies do we have in place to review as a basis? Chris provided to us. I read it. It's actually quite good. And in it is a number of elements that we want to probably refresh in the way we do this. The second thing was I identified the potential form that we could use. Right now, for the most part, either the police department or the administration use formal forms every year with their employees. But we think it's a good idea to put pen to paper because it stimulates a conversation between people, which is a good thing. And if there's any issues, positive or negative, it's something that you can use. The reviews are happening. They're happening a bit more verbal than we'd like, but we're going to look at whether or not we can find a form that works for us. And Brett has committed to do that with the police department, and Joe is looking for that on behalf of the administration team. The other thing that we kicked around here is this something we should extend to the part-time people? We have a lot of people doing part-time lifeguards and what have you. Different ballgame than full-time salary employees. So I'm going to meet with the department heads to determine if there's something that we want to do there. Just formally, how was your performance during the summer this year? Should we hire you back? Any particular feedback, things like that. We're not looking at doing that this year. We'll probably consider doing that next year. We want to walk before we run on personal policies and procedures, so we may entertain that in 2023. The last item that we have here is we've got to make sure there's a lot of activity going on right now in the school realignment. It is a challenging road ahead to hopefully get to a referendum in the three towns of Highlands, Atlantic Highlands, and Seabright for school realignment. A lot of work to be done, and our administration's responsibility is to make sure the mayor's panel has the needed data. We support the meetings that he needs. There's going to be town hall meetings for our residents here in town that have already been scheduled. We got to coordinate with other committees. Joe does a phenomenal job coordinating with other municipalities, other committees, with the state, and we also have to work with the school boards to make this happen. So those are the four areas, Mayor, that we've identified as our primary attention. I know I've taken a lot of time today. We don't have to discuss it here, but if the council feels there are other things that we've missed, or if they're concerned about any of these, I would welcome that feedback. The last two things I would say is we are also responsible for shared services. We discussed the number of shared services that we have in town, and by and large, they appear to be working pretty well. We're entertaining other ones, but nothing rose to a level that we felt it should be a top priority for the committee. So that's why we focused on the other items that I talked about. And lastly, Joe was kind enough to set up a meeting for us yesterday with Jennifer Beam on low housing requirements for Seabright. Most of you on the council are probably more familiar with it than I was, but boy, did my eyes get open yesterday, and she took us through both the requirements and the vulnerability that we have in this town as it relates to what could happen with low-income housing requirements that could be enforced on us if we weren't proactive in our plan. Coming out of that, I would recommend that the council get a full briefing at an upcoming workshop on this. Mayor, I would imagine you've probably heard this before, but there's new and time-sensitive information that you shared with us. So I think it would be great if the council could get an update on that. And Chris, maybe we can put it on an agenda item in a future workshop. So that's what I wanted to cover, Mayor. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Committee work on this also. And as I said, thank you, Council. Anyone council's questions for the committee along the way or public meetings, feel free to share. Thanks. Alright, so as we started to say before, that's the end of the public portion of the meeting. So next up for us.
Excuse me, may I just make a quick shout out? My name is Terry Kay. I'm 6 months new in town. I want to give a shout out to the Public Works Department, if I may. They dramatically elevate the quality of life in town. I'm going to give you one example. I live close to Inri and came one sunset and the bench was broken. That night I rode to Dave and Sean. Bench is broken. Next morning there was a replacement. The bench was replaced, and I just want to say thank you. And I don't know Dave. I'm just sorry. I so appreciate what you brought out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We all agree with you. It's nice that Dave and Sean are here, so it's nice to hear you say it live. But we all appreciate it. For a small staff they have, it's amazing how much ground they cover, and it's often thankless, we know. But they really do throughout the year a phenomenal job for this town. Thanks for your comments. All right, let's take to anything else we want to cover.
For some reason.
Yeah.
I have a motion to open closed session.
Yeah, correct. Mrs. James, I don't know the comments before we close out. All right, thanks for coming in tonight, everybody, and